So good morning to those on the West Coast, good afternoon to those in the UK, good evening, good night for those further into APAC, and welcome to our April Summit. We are the FinOps Foundation for the new folks. We are here to advance the people who manage the value of cloud. You'll notice that is evolving a bit because we're seeing the people involved are getting into broader and broader personas within the organization. So today's summit is the third installment of our State of FinOps data release. State of FinOps is the survey that we run every year, and this is the final summit that is tied to it. And we're going to be talking about tooling and platforms, specifically which technologies and software people are using to execute and implement their FinOps practices. And our mission, as I mentioned, is to advance those individuals doing this work. And what we're here to do, and this is again an evolving mission, so always want to get your feedback, is really to help create connections, which we saw. I'll talk a little bit about meetups that were happening this month, to inspire growth through training and education initiatives, and really to help build mastery and provide a roadmap for how to build out a FinOps practice. If you haven't been to one of these before, we like to say it is not a webinar. You'll note that you can all see each other if you're on video. I encourage you to jump on video. You can drop questions into the chat. Later, we're going to have breakout rooms where you can participate in conversations. But the key thing here is there is a community of over 5,000 different people who are contributing in different ways to the community. Want to highlight some of these people that have been doing this just in the last few weeks on some of the working groups that are happening, some fantastic contributions across the way. And if somebody from the team can drop into the chat and Slack how to get more involved, there's a great page on the website about how to do that. Each month, we feature one of our new premier members who are supporting the foundation. This month, we are excited to bring you Nordcloud and thank them for their support for sponsoring this month's summit. A little bit later, we're going to hear from Jakub Holak there. And a big thank you also to the 16 premier members who support this community: Cloud Health, Google Cloud, SADA, Deloitte, Accenture, Verticent, Aptio Cloudability, McKinsey, Nordcloud, Software One, Tencent, Spot by NetApp, IBM, and HCL. The list is getting longer and longer each month to read. There's also two more that are in stealth, so hopefully we'll hear about them soon. And also there's almost, I guess, 40 plus general members who are kind of the long tail of technology companies associated with this space, providing tooling, services, et cetera. So definitely check those out as well. And speaking of the community that is behind all of this, I wanted to highlight a couple things that happened in the last few weeks. Our FinOps staff had the pleasure of going to London. The 9 of us met up there with a few of our contractors as well to co-host a London roadshow. And this was an evening, a few hours near Liverpool Station in central London, where we talked about European trends and UK trends on the State of FinOps data. We had some great speakers there. We had a big group of people, about 100, who got to network and share stories. Had some great sponsors there who supported that to pay for the event. And it was just really cool to get together again and shake hands and see a lot of folks who we hadn't seen in person in a while. We also got to do a meetup in Edinburgh and had a small but mighty group there who shared their stories, shared some beers. Of course, we were in Edinburgh. We had to have some haggis. We had to conclude a picture of that. But I highlighted these because now the meetup groups are really starting to kick off. Some of them are going in person. Some of them are staying virtual. But if you go to this site, meetup.com/pro/FinOps, you can check in to see if you are close to one of the 28 meetup groups that are running right now. The FinOps Foundation staff, the 9 of us, also got to have our first ever in-person meetup, or offsite rather. We took the train from London to Edinburgh, had a lot of fun along the way. Ben DeMora made us some great Scotland themed gift bags that we enjoyed on the train. But it was cool to actually come back to the site where the Cloud FinOps book originally started. The first few chapters that I wrote anyway were in this very Airbnb at that very desk in 2019. It was great to see that pulled back to the same spot. But the point of that time, and the reason I'm bringing this up, is we spent a couple days really digging into strategy and planning for where the FinOps Foundation should go, how to support the community through those connections, through education and training, through roadmaps and expertise. And most importantly, and I think one of the things we're most excited about, is we spend a lot of time planning FinOps X. And this is, again, our in-person conference that is happening June 20th and 21st. If you're interested in checking it out, we're going to have a full day of content, in-person, breakout tracks. Also notably, there is going to be for the first time, oh, and Fernando in the chat is saying there was also a meetup that happened yesterday, I think, in Amsterdam, which unfortunately we couldn't get a picture of, but that one also happened in person. I heard it was a great event. On FinOps X, one of the cool opportunities here is it's going to be the first time that there is in-person live FinOps training and certification, at least in North America, since 2019. So if you're not certified and you want to actually have train by a couple of the best instructors we've had, Ashley Matko, Ben DeMora, some of these folks who are going to be in person, who've been doing this for years, a really good opportunity there. Lots of content. We don't have all of the breakouts and main stage keynotes fleshed yet. We're accepting submissions. If you want to talk on something, go to x.finops.org and submit that. But you'll see there's going to be multiple tracks, breakouts, there's going to be multiple hours of keynotes, and there's going to be hopefully a really fun evening reception that'll provide a couple hours of great time in Austin, Texas. It's there because we're co-locating with the Open Source Summit event that Linux Foundation is running. So definitely check out x.finops.org. I believe, Steve, keep me honest here, registration is open today, or it's coming?
Now.
Now. It
right
wasn't open like 20 minutes ago, so it's open now. Okay. So you can be, we should do a shout out for the first person to register, but you can actually go and buy a ticket right now if you want for the full day event. Early bird pricing, it'll go up a bit in a couple weeks and a couple weeks after that. But check that out. There's also a Slack channel if you have questions, want to ask about talks, want to coordinate something. Hope to see you there. All right, so 7 minutes in, met my target, and let's get into the meat of the day. So as I mentioned, Nordcloud is sponsoring and supporting this event. They're one of our newer premier members. We're going to welcome Jakub Holak here in a minute. He's actually going to talk about how FinOps relates to sustainability and to what they're calling green ops. And we usually say very clearly, don't pitch, right? Don't come here and say, we're the best provider, or we have the best tooling, or whatnot. But I have to give a shout to Jakub because he included nothing about their company in his initial slides. He just talked about sustainability. And I actually asked him to put in, because we're talking about tooling and services, a little bit about what they did so people can understand what Nordcloud did. So Jakub, thanks for doing that quick bit to open us up. And then we're looking forward to hearing about your take on green ops.
Okie dokie. So, hi. Thanks for the invitations. Thanks for, my name is Jakub Holak. I work at Nordcloud, as JR said. We are basically European leader in cloud, public cloud adoption services, so managed cloud, professional services, of course, advisory and so on. Recently, we've added another piece to our offer. It's a software as a service platform called Clarity. And Clarity Core that you can see on the slide is basically our FinOps tool. With Clarity, we are kind of obsessed about supporting distributed decision making. So I used to tell that it's not that hard to provide, saving opportunity on VM level, or saving opportunity by, identifying orphaned resources. This is the easy part. The hard part is to make sure you can identify who should act on top of those recommendations and make sure they have everything they need to make smart decisions about those recommendations. And this is what Clarity is. One last thing about, we use application as unit of cost and cloud management. This is very important. Let's say something that we preach is that to set the right narrative, the right language, to use the right language to talk between business, finance, and engineering, you should switch the unit of management to application, because this is the piece that every party will understand. This is what you actually run in the cloud. That said, today I would like to talk a little bit about what we call green ops. I really like that now. It used to be DevOps, then DevSecOps. Now we have DevSecFinOps, and we are about to have DevSecFinGreenOps notion. But jokes aside, I would like to tell a little bit more how you can drive the cultural change at your company with help from sustainability. So I've quoted two websites on this slide. On the left, you have update of AWS well-architected framework with this new sustainability pillar. It was introduced late last year. And on the right, you have a quote from FinOps website about usage optimization domain. Using different words, they are stating basically the same thing. Yeah, to run the cloud the right way, you need to only use what you actually need. So use correctly sized, efficient infrastructure to match your business need, nothing more and nothing less. This is what FinOps is, and this is what sustainability in the cloud. This is how it looks like. Can we go to the next slide? So there are design principles for cloud that you can, and they are very similar. The two that we have on this slide, very similar for GreenOps, so sustainability in mind, and FinOps. And what I mean here is like, it's really crucial part is understand your usage. So this is what we are struggling with when we talk about tagging, when we talk about cost allocation, and so on and so forth. And there's very or not much we need to add to bring sustainability discussion to the table, because with carbon emissions, it's really hard to measure the actual carbon emission. It's almost impossible, and not even with cloud or IT, but in general, it's hard. So we usually come up with what's called a carbon proxy. So a measurement that is correlated with your emission levels, but it's not the emission level. And when you think what could be the best proxy, carbon proxy for the public cloud, cost is obvious answer. Like when you use more, cost goes up. When you use less, cost goes down. It's the same with the footprint. There's one, let's say, asterisk or side note. We need to remember that we should always think about street prices, because you can optimize your spend by doing buy optimization, by arrays, for example, but it will not influence your carbon footprint. The VM will use the same amount of energy, no matter if it's paid upfront or paid with pay-as-you-go model. But that said, then we need to maximize utilization, and to maximize utilization, it's what we are after with all this usage optimization, right? Use the right thing. So we can measure the carbon footprint using provider tools. They are precise, or at least something that we can rely on them, but the level of granularity there is not sufficient for let's say, trying to drive cultural change the way we do it with FinOps. So it's on service level, on global usage level, never on for example tag level. So we have dedicated third-party tools like Cloud Carbon Footprint, open source estimation framework, actually. And estimation is keyword. It's hard to use estimated carbon footprint to do compliance reporting for regulatory reasons and so on and so far. But there's one use case that this tool is great too. Can we go to the last slide that I have for today? This is my favorite one. We always talk about getting engineers to take action, but with this, I think we have our toolbox with a lot of, let's say, different tools to drive the cultural change within our companies. And I think with GreenOps, we can get another very important tool, which is influencing others by sustainability, by being green, air quotes. And of course, you can use governance and, let's say, influence the culture. With governance, you can prepare guidelines, architectural principles, like even some programming languages are greener than the others. So you can influence that on this level. But on this cultural change, this is very important because, for example, interesting idea that we did with one of our customers is gamification. Why don't you go with Spring Cloud Cleaning, but instead of talking about removing orphaned resources, you talk about getting greener and plant tree every time you right size a VM, just to drive this this involvement from the engineering team sides. In clarity, just one last comment. We estimate the footprint and show it next to every cost report, just to make sure that everybody understands that well-sized workloads are not only about saving money, that's the one thing, but then when we show right sizing opportunity, we show how much you can save of the footprint of your workloads. And my current role at Nordcloud is product manager. I find a lot of similarities between product management and FinOps within the organization from cultural perspective, because you need to drive the change or influence without formal authority always. Yeah, you are not the boss to the people and you're trying to influence them. Sometimes you're trying to influence your boss, so it's even harder. And I think this, like trying GreenOps or bringing sustainability to this table can help you with both influence, the CSR of your company, but influence the engineers as well. And with that, I'm happy to discuss this during breakout room later today. We'll be there and let's discuss. I know there's much more into sustainability. I wanted to emphasize only this cultural aspect, but let's have discussion around all the topics around sustainability later on. Thank you.
Thank you, Jakub. It's very interesting. And as he mentioned, there is a breakout later. Mark Butcher, longtime member of the community, and a few others are doing a working group there. Mark gave a talk on this in London as well. So if you want to get involved, they're really defining right now what the outputs of that are. And yeah, it's great to hear a vendor focusing there as well. So thank you, Jakub, for coming and being a part of that. I love the comment about FinOps as product management. I keep finding different ways to relate the concepts to other parts of my life as well. If you're a fan of, I'm forgetting the name of the show now, FinOps is Life, we've been quoting. But anyway, with that, we're going to move on to the next section, which is the meat of content about platform and tooling. Ted Lasso, thank you, Josh Bowman in the Slack. I get 700 people staring at me and I can't remember basic shows. So this panel is put together exclusively of FinOps Foundation staff because we wanted to have a neutral view and commentary, not from customers or the platforms themselves, about what we saw in the data. Ashley Ramatko joined us recently after many years running the FinOps practice at Pearson. Joe Daly joined us as well after many years running FinOps practice at Nationwide and Cardinal Health. Vasilio Markanastasakis has been a product manager and service person in this world for 7 or 8 years. And Steve Trask put all this together and is going to be walking through this. He owned the State of FinOps data for us. All these folks, have been working in the space for many years. So we wanted to invite them to give some different feedback and ideas about why the data came out it did, because there were some interesting things, some controversial things, and also some unsurprising things. So with that, Steve, I will pass it over to you.
Cool, thanks, JR. Hey, everyone. Apologies, I've got a slight cold, so my accent isn't quite as normal as before. But just to highlight where we are with the State of FinOps, obviously we had over 1,000 respondents. We covered 40 billion in spend. That's an average, so we could be higher. And also, if you've got any questions, please join the State of FinOps channel. We're happy to reach out to us. There's a lot of numbers here. There's a lot of data. So we do want to encourage kind of like what splits you would like to see from it. So moving on, it does cover a wide range of industries. We try and cover everything as possible. So there's lots of different views, there's lots of different maturities within this. And that's key. And we do want to pre-text these following slides just for the fact that what cloud service providers they use. So we go to the next slide. Oh, actually, sorry, there's a skip there. I added this late yesterday, the next slide. This is a list of all the tools. Oh, sorry, we're jumping around. Sorry, cloud providers. So we wanted to pretext of what cloud providers people were using. We found that over 89% respondents using more one cloud. It does follow market trends, typically AWS being the largest heavy user. And then we have Azure and GCP and on-prem as well, followed by the others as well. But you can see that the medium usage and light usage, again, extends in Azure and GCP. So we do want to preset these are the tools that people are using with these clouds, just to set that context.
Steve, I'll jump back to that previous one with the long range of tools. There was I was surprised personally to see just how many different tools are being used. This list keeps getting longer and longer.
I'm just thinking, how are we going to do this next year? Thinking all these tools of how are we going to ask people about all these tools and the different mechanisms. I know that it was a long list today this year where people kind of like applied what uses they did for each tool. So it's just like if this list keeps growing as it does year on year, it's going to be a mammoth task, but it's super exciting to see that space grow as quickly as it does.
I think it also highlighted just how FinOps as a thing is getting broader, right? And there's tools that are just FinOps, but then there's also the ones around them, right, that are doing SaaS and licensing, automation, CI/CD that are starting to interject into the space.
And I think there's some great questions. Just one just in the chat. So how do we categorize these tools? And I think that's one of the challenges we're facing, and what we really want to solve is like, how do we group them in a logical way that people can use so they can kind of find those right tools, because there's so many tools that do so many different things. So yeah, definitely. Cool. So overall, we aggregated all the kind of the primary tools, the frequently used tools, and the occasionally used tools. Anything with 1% or above respondents, we listed out all out here. So I do want to bring the panel in. I mean, Ashley, from your experience as well, does this seem right? Is there anything that's standing out to you?
Yeah, I think, we've talked about this before, the native tools are really fundamental. If you're using a cloud vendor, you're most likely, consistently using their platforms, you're in there daily. So that resonates that those are fundamental tools. I think as you look at organizations that are more complex, that we just mentioned that, using multiple cloud providers, or the way that you set up your account structure or your project structure, subscription structure, that using some of the SaaS tooling is able to give you kind of a better view sometimes across your account structure and across your vendors that you're using. So that makes sense. And I was, happy to see the kudos dashboard here. Hopefully I'm saying that right. I think they're ones that have been really listening to the customer as they've been developing new features. They've got some great tutorials on how to set it up. So I liked seeing that as well. Datadog's another great one. You've already got engineers inside of those observability platforms. Makes sense that they can show some cost metrics along it as well. So I'd like to see the variety here.
Cool. And if we take a deeper look at this, because this is everything aggregated, if we move to the next slide, you can really see out kind of like which is the primary tools. This is stack ranked in order of primary, but also you can get the use frequently, use occasionally, and tried but don't use. I know, Joe, we've had plenty of conversation about this. What's your perspective on this one as well?
Yeah, I think this is great. What's really interesting to me is the blue and the purple, the use frequently and use occasionally. That we really need to, as practitioners, start thinking about all the different tools that are in our toolbox. We don't just use a hammer. There's a lot of other tools that we would need to use for certain situations. I'm thinking back to my last practitioner days. If you had an anomaly alert in CloudTrail, there's no amount of tagging, no amount of billing data that's going to tell you what is generating that CloudTrail anomaly. So you would use, I'm looking at Splunk there, we would have to go and do some detective work in Splunk, collecting the logs. Was it a new security policy that we implemented, or was an application not operating the way it was intended to? Was the business user using it in a different way? So you really need to start building out, thinking more holistically about all the tools that are at your service here. And I'm kind of laughing at Cost Explorer, the cloud native tools. What some of the cloud service providers are doing, like I think Cost Explorer is underreported, if anything, because you cannot acquire savings plans outside of going through Cost Explorer. So I challenge everyone to really start thinking about all the different tools that they're using and all for what reasons, so that we can get some real maturity and visibility into what's in our toolbox or tool bucket.
Yeah, tool stack.
Tool stack.
Still trying to define that. I think that's really interesting. What are people using and how wide are they using and what combinations? I think that's really interesting. I think in the last couple of days we're looking at this data is like, how can we find those things out? So if we go to the next slide, we can kind of look at the occasional tools listed out there. And I did this yesterday with Baz and looked at how many tools on average are people using, and it's 3.7 tools. Baz, what are your insights on this?
Yeah, so just it's a nice dovetail off of what Joe just said, which is, you're going to have to use multiple tools depending on the use case. So the obvious thing here is there's use cases where folks really need different tools in order to meet them. I think the other interesting thing about this for me is just based on my experience is a lot of organizations, they've already deployed tools, so they've already socialized certain tools, whether it's for dashboarding, whether it's for pushing reports to the edge. And so if they've been using these tools for a while, it's a lot more efficient for them to feed data to these existing dashboards. So I saw in the chat, folks were talking about Power BI. Power BI is a super popular one, especially for enterprise organizations, and they have very powerful dashboarding capabilities. So, a lot of times folks really just want to reharness existing tooling and push cloud data to it. So, there's that scenario, which I think causes a little bit of fragmentation. And then the third thing for me is there's a big culture piece here as well. Despite having purchased a primary tool, folks get used to doing things a certain way. And depending on the size of your organization, it's really challenging to get people to change. And even though your primary tool may do certain things better, folks are just comfortable or more efficient at using a pre-existing tool, maybe a tool like Cost Explorer, because that's where they started and had used it for a couple of years. So they've got scripts or queries already cached or copied and pasted, or they've got their workflow set up. And so it's just easier for them to meet the demands of their day-to-day reporting by just kind of flexing that muscle memory. And so that cultural piece is really like, have you invested the time in order to drive education around your primary tool, or do you have folks in your organization that are still kind of leaning on that muscle memory from pre-existing tools? So those are kind of my three things on this slide.
Well, I think too, to add to that, you see 3.7 tools there. There's integration that's being done in the back end. So we used to have this conversation, do you build, do you buy? And it's like you build and buy, but more importantly, you integrate those into your business processes. And so I think that's become more powerful.
Yeah, and there was a great call out in the chat as well. It's like, do you see the trend of the kind of the homegrown tools? And a point on the last slide was homegrown previously last year was about 4th, I think, and it's moved up to 2nd. So we're seeing those homegrown. It's kind of like, what do we class as homegrown? Is it those integration between tools, or is it something more standalone?
I would also call out here what's really interesting over the last 5 years, which seems like an entire lifetime ago if you go back to cloud cost management 5 years ago, is people really understand the discipline much more now. So they're much more comfortable putting together multiple tools to answer their reporting needs. Where I would think if you rewind a few years, people would lean on third-party tooling a bit more while they're building that, education piece, trying to understand sort of the nuances behind commitment-based discounts, behind commercial discounts, how to deal with amortization, how to deal with cost sharing, and sort of the gaps that were inherent in the cloud billing data itself. So now that folks get these concepts, they're probably more comfortable building, to Ashley's point, and also integrating multiple tools.
Yeah, there's a need for it. Talking last week at the London Roadshow to Sanjay Apti from Vodafone, Vodafone has a very specific multi-cloud strategy. They have different clouds for different purposes. And there's not one tool that has the same feature set across every single cloud. So there's a need to create what capabilities you need to perform for your company to tie a lot of things together. So yeah, to what Ashley said, buy and build. You get your foundation and then also build on top of that to get a full suite of features that you need to run your FinOps org.
Cool, and what we want to kind of dig into, I think we've seen something on the chat as well. It's like, how do we look at these tools as well by maturity? Is there a trend there, or is there a kind of difference there as well? Cool. So we looked at this. The consistent homegrown across runs across all three. Obviously, maturity is self-identified with the participants that took the survey. We're seeing that the top tool is a cloud native, crawl stage, and then third-party tools kind of as the maturity grows on. And then we kind of looked at this and thought, okay, how can we also split the data? Can we split it by cloud spend? So that's what we did as well. Sorry, Jay, I'm speeding you up. So you can see the differences there. Some really surprising ones. I must say that the 100 million plus was a smaller segment. There's fewer participants doing that. I think it was around 89, 90 that responded there. Homegrown tooling popping up to the top, while the other lists as well performing as kind of expected. Ashley, have you got any points on this you'd like to make?
Yeah, I mean, I think that makes sense. When you're spending over $100 million, you probably have a relatively large, hopefully stable engineering team, and engineers like to engineer solutions. So kind of makes sense if you're in that spend that you're maybe doing some more homegrown tools. But I've seen many enterprises that, their engineering culture is, we build great applications and platforms for our customers and we leverage other tools. We're not going to be a security tool. We're not going to be observability tool. We will go leverage those. So I've seen definitely in both areas. I think the one thing, calling this is we talk about the iron triangle and always having to make those trade-off decisions. And that's what you need to do with tooling. And the same thing, like, do you want to invest money into it, or do you want to get it quickly and work with it and integrate it? So I think we see a lot of that happen here. And I think the other thing I just would like, call kind of out is like that we just saw all of those different tools, right? This tooling space is huge. And like, there are companies that are behind there that are putting new features out, monthly, quarterly. And so it's so important, I think, as a FinOps practitioner, if you're leading a FinOps team, to, be looking at those tools on a regular basis, be doing demos from those tools, see what's out there, testing things out. You'd kind of be surprised what some of your engineering teams, might want to use. And so make sure you're including those in those conversations when you're looking at tools too.
Yeah, I would just chime in here too, Steve, really quick and say, a key point, I think what this data is really showing us is if you're a practitioner and you're looking at tooling, interoperability is really key right now. So you're looking at tooling that is API first in terms of its approach. You're looking at tooling that's going to be using modern open standards in terms of data exchange. Because like it or not, eventually you'll probably run into a scenario where you'll need to do either an implementation yourself or integration with another tool.
Yeah. I want to meet the company that says we grew our cloud spend and our environment got simpler. You need to have your tool stack, and I'm interested to hear what people are using.
And don't forget, no matter what tool you have, you're going to have to export to Excel.
Very true. Very true. Tools and services Slack channel. I've already seen people putting their FinOps tooling stack in there and kind of how they connect these things up and what tools they're using. It's great to see kind of what people are using and how they're using it as well. But yeah, please continue the conversation. Again, State of FinOps Slack channel, please ask. I know there's some questions in the chat as well, how we would like this data to be split as we continue to look at it as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, it's fascinating to see this. And I think, Vitor, I'm sorry I steal your thunder a little bit. I can't help it. But, as we say in this space, it depends. We saw, certain incumbent platforms pop up with one dimension of the data. We saw Cloud Health on the top of one. We saw Cloudability another. You see Homegrown in this one. You see native tools there. So that's really what we're seeing is it is very specific to the company. This is my personal take. This is not the official take, but I don't think build versus buy is the thing anymore. It is really build and buy, what we're seeing in the space, or specifically buy then augment is typically the plan, right? So the path starts with native tools. It starts with buying, and then it's buying and augmenting and combining. Buying will make you build, and it should, because the good platforms have lots of integrations and APIs, and you want to be integrating that into the rest of your stack and the rest of the organization. And building is a massive undertaking. I think more than people understand in this space. As someone who's been in it for 10 years, the data involved is not only large, it's complex, normalization of that. And the story I've seen over the 10 years again and again is those who totally build on their own without integrating end up 2 years later with that engineering team gone and orgs happening, and the thing is abandoned, et cetera. So either approach works, I think, but there's a lot of nuance to consider. Critical in all cases, though, I think, is to get the data out of whatever system you're using, whether it's in your own home built or a platform or native. You need to get it into the path of the engineers, in the path of the business, so you can get that feedback going. So if you want to dig more deeply into this space, on July 7th, we're going to be having a vendor showcase with live demos of at least 20 of these top tools. Great way to see them all quickly back to back to back. So hopefully you'll come back for that as well. All right, we have a few new general vendor members who've joined. PBG Consulting is not actually here today due to a personal conflict, but hopefully we have Jim Gallagher from Archera, who I probably need to unmute, who's going to do a quick intro as well. There you go, Jim. Can you hear us?
Hey, everybody. Thank you so much for the opportunity. My name's Jim. I'm from Archera. We're a new ISV SaaS vendor in the space. We just raised our Series A fundraising round. We're a SaaS platform that helps people automate their FinOps journey. Really excited to be speaking with you all today. Luckily, I'm based out of Austin, Texas, so hopefully I get to meet you all in person in a couple of weeks here. But really excited to be a part of this community, and thank you so much for having me.
Okay, Jim, I got to ask, where do we go for barbecue? What's your call?
It depends. If you guys want to stand in line, you can go to Franklin's. But if you want to get out, I'll give you all my secret spots.
I'm going to be reaching out to you. Awesome. Yeah, we're going to hear from Tim Siegel next time around. He unfortunately wasn't able to be here. All right, with that, wanted to bring in Vitor Puente from Nubank, which is very timely because in the chat, Vitor is based in Brazil. There was some folks asking for more involvement down there. Vitor reached out to us I would say 2 months ago with a bit of his story, and we thought it was pretty compelling. They have Homegrown, they have some tooling, they've integrated the things. So wanted to hear their journey, their stack, and how it fits together. So let me get you unmuted here, Vitor, and I will pass to you. Should be good to go there.
Hello, everyone. Are you listening?
Yep, sounds good.
Yes, okay. So thanks, Torment, for the introduction. As just said, my name is Vitor Puente. I will present some tools regarding the FinOps context that we have here at Nubank. Okay, let's move on. Well, so just introducing myself, Vitor Monteiro Puente. I'm a senior engineering manager here at Nubank. I like coffee, I like astronomy. I was born in this beautiful city with a river called Sorocaba, but currently I'm living in this slightly more metropolis city called São Paulo here in Brazil. Please, don't know if everyone knows Nubank, but we are a digital bank platform with 54 million customers. We rely a lot on AWS. Our main infrastructure is AWS, and we are operating in 3 different countries: Brazil, Mexico, and Colombia. Okay, recently we have been named one of the most influential financial companies in the world by Times, and we always like to say that we have a very strong culture, mainly towards engineering. Okay, regarding this culture of engineering, software engineering, inside a bank, we have a team called Cloud Efficiency. With is one of the team that I'm taking care currently, and is a team that is take care of everything regarding the FinOps domain. So we govern our costs, we do reporting, tracking, we inform, give visibility. We also build custom tools to manage our costs from other business units inside Nubank, and we track the costs, and we build tools for cost reductions as well. As an horizontal mindset. The next slides, I will present some of these tools, starting with tagging. So one important thing regarding this slide is that we have a custom resource definition. And by resource, I mean services, squads, custom resource definition from AWS or any other more Nubank stuff, that we build here in-house. And all of that is in this resource definition, which is a repository with a lot of metadata on how to build, how to operate, how to do that, the provisioning on AWS. And based on all those definitions, on all these files that specifies all these properties, we have an engine here, and this engine symbol here, you can see it as a service, as a software, that we run, read data from them, and apply that all the metadata with, of course, like doing somehow some kind of processing in the middle, but apply that to the infrastructure. So this is basically the tagging that we have. We got the definitions and we make them arriving in production. This is the base for every other tools as we move forward. Then, okay, we have that arriving a lot of tagging and metadata that we have defined, all teams defined by their own, okay, arriving in production. Based on that, we can extract a lot of custom data on the usage, that all resources that is in our infrastructure, in our production environment, which is the number 2 here, and correlate that with the number 1 with the AWS curve file that we also extracted and send those data to the data lake that we have, which is represented by this resource usage data. We aggregate that, process that, and we provide different data sets to build custom reports, which is number 3, and finally provide those reports to the other teams here that mainly business units, that is the verticals that the Nubank has, the credit card, New Conta, the lending business unit. And as I said, since we have a lot of predefined custom meta tags that we can correlate with usage data in a very different ways, providing that the teams allow them to define custom strategies for reducing costs or for managing their costs, and this is what we are enforcing a lot in the last quarter with them.
Vitor, we didn't even need this slide. You're not even talking too fast.
Yeah. This slide was to remember me to talk a little bit slower because sometimes I got excited, but
it's
good,
great. From our prep. Yeah, perfect. Yeah. I love the excitement.
Let's go. Moving on, another tool that we have that we find pretty awesome, brings a lot of cost reduction initiative. And as I said, like this team called Efficiency takes care of visibility, but also takes care of cost reduction initiatives with a mindset of a horizontal mindset. We have a right sizing tools, which again takes care of the balance of we have metadata and custom tags that build up in our platform that we manage, and have fine-grained detail of usage of those resources. We have this engine that again is just a software service, it's a system services that we run in our infrastructure that takes all those usage data, process it, and define what are the adjustments that it has to do in services in productions, the real services running productions, and apply that to the definitions of their services. So these definitions will arrive to the productions, okay? We then will have a new behavior of the systems of the services, and then this is also by our monitoring systems collected and go back to our usage data lake repository when we process it again and we adjust it again. This is a living process, like we keep doing this all the day, all the week. We do hundreds of changes in resources usages like memory, CPU, provisioning data tables all the time, like this is pretty awesome.
And I want to ask on this one, right sizing is something that the native tools, do. The platforms have, spent years developing complex algorithms here. Why don't you take it from somewhere else and use recommendations? Where are you building your own?
Yeah, good one. This initiative started with the right sizing of DynamoDB tables, and we have partners in AWS here at Brazil. We are very close to them. We have very frequent meetings with them. And by the time we started to design this, which was more or less 2 years ago when we started the book, 3 years ago when we started this initiative, we didn't have that tool for DynamoDBs, and we started with DynamoDBs. Now the tools is good, it's robust, it's easy to extend to other services. So we extended to the Kubernetes clusters and the computing services that we have, and now we have so much fine-grained data, and we are so much familiar. And it's so good for us to do fine-grained adjustments and easy for us to use it. And we are planning to extend it to other layers that AWS cannot provide us, So this is the why. Also, teams are very able to opt out. This is just a note, a remark. Anomaly detections. This is interesting. I would like to bring this here because this is a partnership that we had with Cloud Zero. So Cloud Zero is also another company that we are partnered with them recently. And one use case that we have already implemented, deployed in production is the anomaly detection. So they are aware of our usage, and whenever we have a cost spike, this cost spike is identified and it is notified. Currently we have used Rely on Slack, and we also have a Slack channel for cost exploration, so people can go to that Slack channel, understand and properly act on it. I mentioned Cloud Zero. We are partnered with them in this anomaly detection. We also have some tags, cleaning tags initiative that we are also partnered with them. And I would like to mention also Spot.io is another partner that we have here to manage Spot instance. Nubank rely a lot on Spot instance, as I will show next. And these are two partners that we have regarding this team. So what? So Vitor, you show a lot of building tools and some partners. What are good numbers that I think it's relevant to share with you all? More than 85% of our costs are tagged. This is something that we are also able to do in a very scalable way. Since we have all resource definitions, everyone define their resources, new teams, new services, new stuff that are created, they are properly tagged from up front. We are executing nowadays more than 1,000 changes in resource provisioning in production per week. Nubank has a lot of specificities. We have a shard architecture, so we have a lot of services that are replicated by shards. All of these has different usage types, different load types, and we managed to adjust that according to the users every time. As I said, like right sizing is a living process. It's every time applying changes in production in order to reduce cost and to fit better the load that we have. And we rely more than 70% of all whole computing services in spot instance as well. Okay, so as Storman has mentioned previously, we were talking like yesterday, it's build versus buy. No, it's like it depends, as this very good quote for Kate back, like every decent answer to interesting questions begins with, it depends. It's not a simple yes or no. Things that I would like to share some thoughts is that every environment has some specificities, like be aware of your specificities. It's not build versus buy, it's build and buy, and you probably have to mix on what makes sense, you know. You may have a more complex problem, or you may have a simpler problem. Look to the problem you want to fix this, see like which kind of knowledge I want to keep, which kind of knowledge I want to take a leverage from custom building to for standard build tools, you know, and decide. This will have a lot of implications in how you drive your business and how you drive your teams, and the effort required to not only build, but let's not forget also to maintain. Every integration, every custom tools you have to maintain, and this is where the pain starts, you know. So this is more or less the thought that I would like to say.
Fantastic thoughts, and sorry to skip you. We're just a little bit late on time, but he's staying around for the after session. We're going to break out for 30 minutes. So if you have questions, there were a few great questions in the chat for you. Please stick around to hear more. And thank you. The content was very interesting. I really appreciate it. I hope to come down to Brazil at some point to visit. All right. The next speaker we have is Kate Ferguson, and Kate was kind enough to agree to do this while she is on holiday in Europe. She says her Wi-Fi is going well there, the Airbnb, so hopefully things go well. Kate, really happy to have you here from Liberty Mutual Insurance. Let me get you unmuted, and we would love to hear your story. Oh, you're already unmuted. Perfect.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Awesome. Hi, everyone. My name is Kate Ferguson, and I'm currently a data analyst at Liberty Mutual. And really what I'm here today to talk about is sort of my story through FinOps and how it's grown alongside how I've evolved and how it's evolved here at Liberty Mutual and where we think the future might be going. So you'll notice years in my career are 2 and years in FinOps are also 2. So I unknowingly started in FinOps right out of college. And we'll get into that a little bit later, but I've been enjoying it ever since. And as you see at the bottom, I am a huge Wordle and New York Times crossword enthusiast. So if you are also one of those, you are a friend of mine. And as JR mentioned, I'm currently traveling and I love to travel. So the picture on the right was actually taken in Cusco, Peru. So if you have any travel recs, let me know. But how did I get here? Why are we here today? What sort of events led to this happening? So I actually studied finance and management information systems at RIT in Rochester, New York. And that was a pretty unique experience. So it was a business school of about 200 people inside a 20,000 per student campus. And a majority of those students were engineers, whether that be mechanical, chemical, computer, science, etc. So from an early time in my learning career, my actual career, I began to learn how to interact with engineers and sort of share knowledge, understand their needs, how they approach their work. And as a part of my curriculum, I was required to do an internship. So my internship was done at Mozilla in San Francisco, and I was a financial analyst intern. But while there, I managed to spend a variance analysis for IT and innovative technology. And that experience really taught me that what I want to do when I'm out of college is I want to be the bridge between business or finance and technology in some form, shape, or way, whatever that meant. So when I was going through my college or my job search after college, Liberty Mutual seemed to have the perfect job posting for me. It was as a technology finance financial associate. So I signed up, and unknowingly, I essentially applied to the department and I fell into the unofficial FinOps team. So we rolled up to the CFO, and over the past 2 years, it's been pretty eventful. We've moved from rolling up to the CFO to rolling up to the CIO. We've migrated our homegrown tool the first year I was there from on-prem to the cloud. So that involved a lot of hands-on experience trying to understand working with engineers, understand data testing, data quality is good, and also learning what the heck the cloud is. As a finance major, I didn't really learn what the cloud was. And when I worked at Mozilla, which is a tech company, right? You all know Firefox. it was actually a black box. When I had a variance, I would ask, okay, how do I figure out why there's a variance? They're like, oh, it's a black box, right? So I've gone from a black box of a job for AWS to it being my full-time job. And that led us here to Liberty Mutual. So a little bit about our FinOps team, and it may sound similar to what we were talking about earlier or from other State of FinOps data, but essentially we're a 4-person FinOps team that has a product owner, 2 data analysts, and a solutions engineer. And really what we do is a little bit of everything. So we do the financial book close processes, we do automation where possible. So we're trying to automate as much of our monthly processes, as much of our reporting as possible, just to make sure that since we're a small team serving a Fortune 100 company's cloud spend, we're really spending as much time and focus and energy as possible where we can add the most value. Additionally, continuous learning, whether it's learning what the heck the cloud is, the different vendors, how to optimize FinOps, et cetera. It's been a learning curve for the entire journey, as I'm sure you guys can all relate. So my YouTube feed is always popping up with FinOps recommendations or what the new things in AWS are. But it's been hard because we're multi-vendor, right? So we have AWS, we have Azure, Google, Datadog, Nubank. We have so many different products. It can feel crazy and really hard to try and keep up with it. So a lot of learning, but following along in the FinOps Slack channel has definitely been one of the biggest levers for me, because then I can see, oh, Steve posted this in the Slack channel, right? Maybe if I have a question about that in the future, I can ask, or even the search capability has been really great. But in terms of challenges along the way, again, the technical, what is the cloud and how do I keep up, but also organizational, right? We're a huge company. So our ratio, as you'll see in the right-hand box, we have 4 people for over 5,000 technology employees on top of the senior leadership who want answers, reports, data, et cetera, right? So learning who wants what, managing that, and then getting the data ready for them has been one of the hardest pieces of just being fully remote and not knowing who's who. Additionally, with our homegrown tooling, the reason why we have homegrown tooling and what it essentially is it just synergizes, similar to what JR and team were talking about earlier. It synergizes those multi-cloud vendor data. So we have AWS, Azure, and GCP as a single pane of glass for our customers so that they can go in and see what their application or artifact spend is without needing to IM me or my product owner. We're also working on training courses, right? Because there's so many people. So we're trying to make sure everyone can understand their costs and optimization opportunities at their own pace. And the biggest piece of all is the imposter syndrome. I think that's the biggest challenge I face and still am facing. Is almost quarter life crisis inducing, if you will. I technically am a data analyst, but I'm also kind of a financial analyst, kind of a business analyst. I don't really know what I am, but I'm happy, right? And my leadership understands that my job isn't exactly a data analyst, but they're willing to support me as we kind of figure out what the FinOps team's definitions and roles are here at Liberty Mutual. So I feel really fortunate to have that opportunity. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out. But again, quarter life inducing, I have no clue what the future holds, but I really want to keep being that bridge between technology and finance in some form or capacity. And I think FinOps is a great place to be to do that. So.
Okay, that was really, really amazing. And I don't think you could have given a better pitch for somebody to come work at Liberty Mutual than I am happy. Great story. Excited that you're on this journey. Kate's also sticking around to do a breakout with more detail, actually with Stacy Case, who runs our professional development. Stacy, do you want to speak to this slide? Pick it up from here? Or did she step away? Well, I'll take it.
Yes, I couldn't find my mute. I have so many windows open right now. Yeah, folks, we announced this last summit. We are doing a $100,000 FinOps scholarship this year. I'm in the process of solidifying the format and everything, but if you do have questions about this or you'd like to participate, please email us at training@finops.org. We also want to just kind of say that we are going to be doing some needs-based scholarship as well for FinOps X. This is part of the same program the Linux Foundation has, where we'll allow a few people to not only go to the conference, but we'll also subsidize some airfare and some hotel for those people. And the process for that will be announced soon. But if you have questions or interest in that, please just give us an email. Send us an email.
Thank you, Stacy. The last 5 minutes, we're going to talk about how to get involved in working groups. I want to highlight something that I noticed as we were watching this. It's intentional. We brought in 2 speakers who have homegrown tooling. That is very much not because we think homegrown tooling is the way to go. We were looking to be sort of fair and equitable to all the platforms in that sense. I want to highlight all of the platforms that came up on that list as leaders. We have a ton of customer stories from all those who would have loved to have spoken and told very similar success stories. So I think the platforms are probably, for the majority of people in that certain scale, the way to go. Some are building themselves. We don't have a strong opinion, go either way. Just looking to be fair and equitable, so we didn't have just certain ones in there. So thank you all for telling your stories. On the vendor platform showcase in July, you will actually get to hear from all the platforms as well. With that, pass it to Vaz to talk about the working groups, and then we will get into the breakout sessions at the end for anybody who wants to stay on.
Yeah, thanks, JR. So the next couple slides are really just for the community to have a look at the different working groups that are in flight right now. Some are actively working, some are in the proposal stage. 2 items to call out on this slide. The working group for ITFM and TBM. They have a survey that they've created, and they would love the community's input. I'm just going to grab that link and post it in the Zoom chat for folks. So if you have an interest in ITFM and TBM, this working group is looking to understand the intersection of FinOps and ITFM and TBM. And so if you can help them out and take a peek at that survey and provide your input, they definitely would appreciate it. The other item on this slide is the US government working group has just wrapped their first sprint, and they've created a public sector FinOps playbook. So this is based off of the FinOps framework and the great resources in our Adopting FinOps guides. I'm going to push that into the Zoom chat as well. If you have a moment, please take a look at the great work that they've done. And I just want to congratulate them on producing such a great resource for the community. Next slide, we'll take a look at another active working group, as well as some working groups that are in the proposal stage. We have some folks that are getting together now, trying to figure out scope and what their deliverable will be for their first sprint. So if you're interested in unit economics, if you're interested in figuring out what an open standard for cloud billing data might look like, you can see the Slack channels on this slide. Please go there, raise your hand. You can also see the folks that are leading the charge, and you can reach out to them directly as well. Sustainability is also making great progress. They presented recently at our London summit, and talk to Mark Butcher or Steven there if you're interested in getting involved. That working group is actively working now, but it's never too late to join. And then the last slide are 2 working groups that are looking for some support. Just get you to move to the next slide for me, JR. Yeah, thank you. 3 working groups looking for support. So these 3 working groups, these are working groups that are just beginning. They're just in the sort of brainstorming phase, kind of working on their working group proposals. Again, you can see the Slack channel on this slide, as well as the folks that are and the last one there, the AI for ML, that you can reach out to. But they're looking for support. So if these topics interest you and you're looking to get involved, join the Slack channel and join the conversation. On a last note, just to wrap up, because I know we're pressed for time, we've introduced some new content on FinOps.org. If you have an idea for a working group and you don't see it on the projects page at FinOps.org, you can submit an idea. Just there's a form you can fill out. It's very lightweight, just asking for an abstract, your name. We can contact you, follow up to get some clarification and talk with you about your ideas. So if you have a moment, head over to the projects overview page at FinOps.org, and I will exhale. Thanks, Yer.
Perfect. Thanks for that overview, Baz. With that, bunch of events coming up. Check out the website if you want to get plugged into local meetups and whatnot. Definitely don't forget to check out the FinOps podcast that we talked about at the beginning. Some great stories there. If you love hearing these deeper cultural stories, you get 30 minutes instead of 5. And let's get to the breakouts for anybody who wants to stick around. We're going to do about 30 minutes of these. Stay as long as you want or as little as you want. If not, we will see you next month. Reminder on the code of conduct here, we do want you to talk on these. We do want you to contribute, but we don't want you to talk too much. Share your thoughts. Don't monopolize the conversation. Please make room for others from different backgrounds, others from different personas, others from different places, and share their thoughts. Don't do pitches, especially for the vendors, right? If you're a customer of a vendor, totally fine to talk about what vendor you use, talk about what works for you, but please don't do that. This one's good, that one's bad. Just share stories instead.